Yeah. Hey man, all I'm saying is, nigga, you always got something to say. It's like you don't shut up. On the track.
A lot of niggas died 1865. Single Michael fled high, we ain't gon' let it ride. Everybody hollering black was never on your side. They do maps to tell your apps where you sleep at night. They put that white man on. Got you begging them for answers like that white man know. Had you swearing you was African, that's that white man home. Had you proud to be a savage, that's that white man's zone. And I ain't talking shit, this by definition. If being savage was our nature, y'all be non-existent. We done took your ass out when we was in them kitchens. Instead of showing you how to live and how to maintain business. White supremacy fake. Only way that shit real is if you do what they say.
Shout out to everybody in the chat. Hit that like button. Let's get it, man.
So dope, my eyes low. When you move like God, the time slow. I came back for the blacks and John Doe's. Crack open them land patents, let go of them townhomes. What's a native to a native? He $5 dough if he not melanated. Pale faces got you waiting on a savior. Sending prayers up, he texting back on vacation. Yeah, God's children. Give all your praise to Jesus, but how God feeling? He say put no one before him in divine image. It's you with God and Christians. I got a vision, but niggas ain't gotta listen, so they don't. We came from the soil, wasn't fucking with no boats. Bible took our spirit, English potted on our homes. Tribal families turned on us, don't act like y'all don't know. But fuck them and they grudges. We was something turned to nothing. And now we nothing's turned to something. Reincarnation of ancients, fresh up out the oven. This the message to the black man. 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 Shooters on my roof, lawyers in the coop. We can never die, bitch, we bulletproof. This the message to the black man. This the message to the black man. Say you wasn't slaves, you was prisoners of war. You stop wasting your time, these other bitches ain't important. You ain't meditating, you ain't mating with the sauce. Like what the fuck's a noodle if you ain't painted with the sauce? I find it hard to trust the pastor who rather side with the master, who preaching we should submit while getting murdered and captured. About how we should wait on God is never our vernacular. They get
meditation.
Suave on the
The Hollywood.
work is on its way, boy.
Got a 4-5 drum, but a 5 on the street.
I sold my heart right to the streets and I can't play with that. This shit that I did for the streets, I'm not gonna talk about that. I bought my youngest a new 40, told him play with that. So when them niggas spin the black, how you gon' play with that? Got a 4-5 with a new drum, got a new 5 in the streets. Ran down on the back blocks and I died in the streets. 4-5 with a new drum, got a new 5 in the streets.
Laying down on the back
Blocks
block.
and I died in the streets. Bodies on my conscience and I won't let it. Paranoia taking over, I won't let it. Out your right mind, you won't sober. Though the streets took a toll on you, but you a soldier. This shit I seen too many times before. Drugs taking over, they won't let them go. They make the wrong move, fuck it, we gon' let it blow. He just let me know that niggas' minds ain't right. Only killing for protection. My young niggas got obsessions. For that clout, they gon' press him. Consumed by the hate, another snake that's gon' bless him. He's supposed to be your brother, but he's screaming out that slide shit. Got a blood oath with my family, that's my tie. Y'all put your faith in me, and now we got it, we gon' all shine. And that's my word to the streets. 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 That's my word, yeah. I sold my heart right to the streets, and I can't play with that. This shit that I did to the streets, I'm not gonna talk about that. I bought my youngins up before they told them play with that. So when them niggas spin the black, how you gonna play with that? Got a 4-5 with a new drum, got a new 5 in the streets. Married down on the back blocks, and I've died in the streets. 4-5 with a new drum, got a new 5 in the streets. Married down on the back blocks, and I've died in the streets.
Father God, first I ask for forgiveness. I ask that you look past our times that we have fell short. Father God, for the ones who do not know your love, Father God, I know that is my purpose to be a lighthouse to your grace. Wherever you lead my steps, whatever obstacle or hardships that come, I pray that you give us strength in the face of the enemy. Father God, thank you for listening to my soul.
Make sure y'all share that live stream, y'all.
I sold my heart right to the streets, and I can't play with that. This shit that I did for the streets, I'm not gonna talk about that. I bought my youngins up before they told them play with that. So when them niggas spin the black, how you gonna play with that? Got a 4-5 with a new drum, got a new 5 in the streets. Married down on the back blocks, and I've died in the streets. 4-5 with a new drum, got a new 5 in the streets. Married down on the back blocks, and I've died in the streets.
Suave on the track.
Whatever it takes. The alleyway.
Coco, this your season right now.
They won't see me. They won't let me hear. I gotta sleep with one eye open, tripping, making me nervous. I take a piss, my hand on the string. I know the odds wanna murder. I got a feeling deep my stomach, paranoid, yeah. I won't let them yeah. They won't see me, yeah. I gotta sleep with one eye open, tripping, making me nervous. I take a piss, my hand on the string. I know the odds wanna murder. I got a feeling deep my stomach, paranoid, yeah. I can't let them yeah. They won't see me, yeah. I put attention, all in my blood, all in my veins. They started with perky, now that hair by numb is veins. You started with serving, now them drugs drove you insane. Started with dealing, I grew up with killers, they taught me the game. I got some niggas that die behind, and that shit won't never the same. I know some niggas that lie behind, and that bullet had his name. Ain't no reason to cry about, cause that shit won't never change. MTF the 4th and P, my niggas can't get out the game. I gotta sleep with one eye open, tripping, making me nervous. I take a piss, my hand on the string. I know the odds wanna murder. I got a feeling, keep my stomach, paranoid, yeah. I won't let them yeah. They won't see me, yeah. I gotta sleep with one eye open, tripping, making me nervous. I take a piss, my hand on the string. I know the odds wanna murder. I got a feeling, keep my stomach, paranoid, yeah. I can't let them yeah. They won't see me, yeah.
Lost see, I glossed to it, shit ain't been the same. Heard the ops talking to the feds, giving names. Who gon' feed my family if they take me out the game? Keep one in the head and one eye open, that ain't change. I'm quick to catch a body. When I shoot, he shoot, I know bro shooting.
Niggas died at 65. Yeah. Niggas died at 65. Yeah. Hey man, all I'm saying is, nigga, you always got something to say. It's like you don't shut up.
Blazing on the track.
A lot of niggas died 1865. Single Michael fled, highway ain't gon' let it ride. Everybody hollering, black was never on your side. They do maps to tell your apps where you sleep at night. They put that white man on. Got you begging them for answers like that white man know. Had you swearing you was African, that's that white man home. Had you proud to be a savage, that's that white man's zone. And I ain't talking shit, this by definition. And being savage was our nature, y'all be non-existent. We done took your ass out when we was in them kitchens. Instead of showing you how to live and how to maintain business. White supremacy fake. Only way that shit real is if you do what they say. We the guards of the gate, so when they say they fear God, now you know what they made.
Shout out to everybody in the chat, man. It's your brother Big Aboriginal Power, man. You already know the vibes, man. Hey, hit that like button, man. Thumb up the video, support the channel, man. I got a nice fire bill for you guys lined up, man. Hey, I gave y'all a sneak peek of it yesterday, man. It was a fire ass bill. I need y'all to support the channel, man. I ain't gonna start the bill until we get some support. I do want to shout out to one of the brothers that supported. Shout out to Craig for the Cash App donation. He said for the information. He said for the information. Shout out to everybody, man. We better get cracking with this, man. I do want to say peace and blessings to everybody in the chat. This is the Wake and Bake Show. This is the brother Big Aboriginal Power. I do want to say peace and blessings to everybody, man. Make sure y'all hit that like button, thumb up the video. I do want to take the time out to shout out some of the brothers and sisters that's in the chat, that comment, that took their time out to do so, man. So let me shout out to y'all. I do want y'all to hit that like button. It's very important for you guys to share the live stream. Shout out to Juan Torres, Sagittarius Jones, D-Hawk, Shamel Thompson, Wilmore Reed, Snake God. Shout out to Pop Pop Reed, Drake Cobb Music, Joshua Stewart, Mound City Mellows, RP Fam LLC, Sean P, The Original Anglo, and Maurice Miller, DTG, what's up? Legend of the Naga, Mound City Mellow, Yamasi Ton, General Peace, Craig, shout out to my brother Craig in the building, Cool Face, Matthew Simmons, shout out to everybody in the chat, man. Shout out to everybody. Enoch's in the building, CC the Boss Queen, I see you. I see you. Hey, man, go and get them likes up in the building, man. Go turn up with them likes. Don't get it in, man. This is the Wake and Bake Show, so I do want to know where each and every one of you guys at in the chat. Go and leave a comment. Let me know where y'all at in the United States and what y'all smoking on this Grand Rising. Man, what y'all smoking on? How y'all feeling? Y'all heard the sneak peek from the bill yesterday, man. We're going to get right back into that, man. White slaves and the forgotten cause of the Civil War. It's a dope-ass bill, man. I think y'all be able to take a lot from it. Yeah, man, we're going to get into the first half of shit that we got lined up. So yeah, man, I think it's gonna be a dope conversation, man. So hey, I'm about to light my wood up. Y'all already know the tradition. Light the wood up. Let me get my lighter. Okay. Hold on. All right, here we go. Fire in the motherfucking hole. You already know the vibes. What y'all smoking on and where y'all at this Grand Rise. It's very important for you guys to thumb up the video, support the channel. Cash App tags at the bottom right of the screen. You got PayPal that's ticking across the screen at the bottom of the screen. Support the channel, y'all. We ain't starting until we get some support. You got to get at least 3 people to support the channel. 3 times the join. We got Craig already, so we just need 2 more people to support the channel, man. Support the channel on my time and content. Shout out to Big Ab TV, man. If you ain't subscribed to Big Aboriginal TV, make sure y'all run over there real quick. You go subscribe. Check out the latest video he did today. Dope live stream. Shout out to my brother Aboriginal TV, man. Shout out to Aboriginal TV. If you ain't subscribed to Supreme Chief Holiday, make sure y'all go subscribe. Somebody said Pluto runs. Somebody said they on the Pluto runs. Let's get it. Let's get it. Need y'all to thumb up the video, support the channel before I even get started, man. Shout out to my brother Thompson's one. Shout out to Thompson's one. Hey, Thompson's one, I'm sending it to your phone, bro. I'm sending it to your phone. I'm not dropping the link in the chat, gang. Not dropping it in the chat. I'm about to send it to your phone, though, right now, gang. Send it to your phone right now, A1. By the time you hear this, that motherfucker, if you hearing this, it's already in your text message. Don't do that. It's in your text, gang. Yeah, we ain't starting a lot till we get some support in here, man. Hey, man, I know y'all been watching this shit with Top Cat, and he set Sonetta up with that girl, right? Y'all remember that, right? Well, the girl exposed him. She been exposing him since that happened on Clubhouse. We got Joseph Preston Henson Jr.'s name. His name is Top Cat name is Joseph Preston Henson. You feel what I'm saying? Listen, it is nasty work, gang. What's going on with this guy? This guy is a pimp. He's been charged with white slavery. This guy is a nasty guy in our community, man. He's not somebody that we should be. You feel me? Yeah, it is. And I'm gonna expose it on my next video. We'll talk about that later. I just want to give y'all a heads up on that. You know what I'm saying? Y'all know I got the exclusive. I even got the files. Nigga, I kept the files. Nigga, we got all the court cases, everything, man. We got everything. Poof. Lil Joseph Preston Henson. That's his name. Joseph Jr. Nigga. JJ. Nigga. Remember JJ? Shout out to everybody in the chat, man. We about to get this shit cracking. Wait till A1 to hit the link, man, so he can support. He can get started on this white slavery conversation. Shout out to my brother A1, man. This week tomorrow I'm gonna probably have something lined up real nice for y'all. Me and A1. My computer at the shop. I didn't even bring it out today. I can't even find a charger. I'll find that bitch today. Tomorrow we'll be screen sharing, so be looking out for that. That nigga got like 5 domestic abuse. Like it's all kind of shit going on with cuz. I ain't here to talk about that. We're gonna talk about white slavery right now. All right, we got Sham Thompson sent the Cash App donation supporting the dollar challenge. That's 2 people we got to support the channel. Come on, y'all. Y'all ready to get it cracking? We got A1 in this motherfucker. We got Unconscious one in here. What's going on, A1?
Peace, peace, peace. Peace to the gods, peace to the goddesses, peace to the Aborigines, North,
Yo,
South,
peace,
Central,
peace, peace, peace,
as well
peace,
as the
peace, peace.
conjoined
It's
out.
Unconscious.
You can hear me, AP?
Yeah, I heard you.
Okay. Yeah, shout out to all the Aborigines, North, South, Central, as well as the conjoined islands, as well as our brothers and sisters who got trapped over on that side of the world. So shout out to everybody, man.
That's a fact. You know I do one of the best A1 impersonations, right?
You and Light Man and shit. Where Light
Yeah,
Man been
Light
at?
Man's pretty good. Light Man's pretty good. Light Man's pretty good.
Jersey, where you at? I know you somewhere listening to this shit. Cause every now and then I get a message from his ass. Just some random message. He like, yo, I can't hear you. Like I was going in the other day. He's like, yo, I couldn't hear you. I'm like, yo, who the fuck is this? And I had to scroll. I'm like, oh man, let me save this nigga number, man.
Yeah, he did me like that too. He was like, yo, this some good shit right here. You know what I mean? So shout out to Jersey, man. He always in the cut watching, man. He played the cut like yeah, shout out to
So what you got going on, man, with this title, man? Give me a little,
you know the title. I got some audio lined up for the people, man. We're gonna be breaking down the history, the actual forgotten cause of the Civil War, dominantly being the white slave, the Union wanting to take ownership and taxing and being able to use these people for votes instead of using them. They want to use property and church. So we're gonna kind of get into that whole conversation, the forgotten cause of the Civil War, highlighting the white slaves factor. I'm pretty sure
you
you
got
already
the Arthur Michael the fuck is his name? The Arthur they was white and they were slaves. Oh, you got
this is the audio podcast from a website. It's not on YouTube, so they're gonna be going in on the actual white slave. They're gonna be bringing out the $450,000 book and going through some of the literature and forgotten cause of the Civil War.
And see, and look, the Aborigines, this shit right here is crucial because now you need to cross-reference this information with the information that they're not telling you. So just say like this is the elephant in the room that, oh, nah, anytime it come down to the term slave, like I said years ago, it could be niggas in the room, it could be Africans, it could be our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, or it could be an American Aborigine in the room, and that term slave come up, the Africans ain't raising their hand. Some of our Caribbean brothers and sisters not raising their hand. The first hand you gonna see go up is gonna be Fatima or Raheem and shit. So they mention the term slave. Motherfuckers be proud about that shit. They proud to be celebrating Juneteenth on some ridiculous notion that somebody came through and said, oh, the slaves are free. When I read the Mr. Stevens of Georgia to you guys, and they told you beyond the Grand Rio, whatever.
The Rio Grande.
Besides the Rio Grande lies the Mauritanian races and the Moorish people and they're Indian
Indian
associates.
associates. Right. That's a fact.
See, and
That's
see
a
the thing
fact.
of it like this now. So what I'm doing here is I'm not putting them more in the power seat. I'm letting you know that it's something else going on that they're not fucking telling us. And that's the reason, like I told people years ago, I'm gonna just say this and I'll let you go ahead and do your thing. I'm gonna jump out. I told people years ago, the culture
Hey,
you looking for.
you can stay on here if you want to. I think you'll probably be able to insert some good information as we build.
No, I definitely stay on. I'm gonna say this right. The culture that you guys looking for between these mongoloids and some of these mestizos and some of these Europeans, the culture, like we were saying the other day about these powwows and some of these other gatherings, about you looking for this primitive culture, you're never going to find it because we was not living like these fucking Indians. We wasn't nomadic. We wasn't living in no more. We wasn't hunter-gathering. We wasn't living like that. So when you can't find your culture and you wondering why you can't find your culture, you're like, oh, the white man lied to us. No, the white man took your culture. Your culture is the light bulb. Your culture is the lawnmower. Your culture is the refrigerator. Your culture is the engine, etc. But because these people telling you that your people was primitive people, you can't even conceive in your mind that your people had to sign from 09 to do this without the
They
assistance
don't
of the
even understand
Europeans.
that their ancestors' intelligence is the meat and potato or how normal society operates today.
Bro,
We are the meat and potato, man.
and listen, that's what I'm saying. Like, even when you get into the forgotten cause of civil war, you're not taking that information with what they're not telling you, with the fact that that it was already Negroes free. But with that being said, man, go ahead and play your audio, and I'm just gonna sit back and I'm listening, man. And I give
I'll be stopping
my
it. I'll be
commentary
stopping
as we
it.
go along.
I'll be stopping it throughout the build just to insert, to run it back, to add in clarity to certain things. So, Ben, we ain't gonna wait no farther, man. We got 98 people in the chat. I need everybody in the chat to drop them fire emojis in the chat. Thumb up the video and support the channel. Cash App tags at the bottom right of the screen. Shout out to Snake Guy for the supporting the $2 challenge. Shout out to the brother Snake Guy and Craig for supporting the $2 challenge. We're gonna go ahead and get this shit cracking right now. Shout out to Kenneth. Also, shout out to Kenneth Broly for the Cash App donation. He said, for the knowledge. I appreciate you. You ain't got to thank me. We appreciate you. You know what I mean? As a content creator, a lot of this content that we create wouldn't be possible, wouldn't be worth it if you guys wasn't in tune with it and constantly repeated and shared it. So we appreciate all y'all work as well. So shout out to Kenneth Burley for the Cash App donation as well. All right, we ain't gonna wait no farther, man. Let's get straight into this audio, man. Let's turn up. Let's go.
She says, okay, worthy is her choice of the word exactly. Imagine how it must have been for plantation mistresses to see day in and day out white.
So this book is going in on the forgotten cause of the Civil War book. Let's run it back like 10 seconds. Let's get right into it.
Chestnut. So here we go. Regardless of the legal criteria established for being a white person, it is a fact that many white people remained enslaved under the Partist rule. I gotta bring that back. Regardless of the legal criteria established for being a white person, it is a fact that many white people remained enslaved under the Partist rule. A most telling observation is that of Mary Boykin Chestnut, a Southern aristocrat and wife of James Chestnut Jr., U.S. Senator from South Carolina. An entry in her diary for March 1861 reads, and this is where we get the forward I just read. I'm not going to read it again. And she says, okay, particularly noteworthy is her choice of the word exactly. Imagine how it must have been for plantation mistresses to see day in and day out white slave children who look the same as their own white children. Worth noting here is that when Ben Ames Williams edited Chestnut's diary for publication in 1905, he changed the word exactly to the word partly.
Y'all hear that? They already showing you that they do the switcheroonie right then and there with this shit. They telling y'all that they do the switcheroonie. They showing you that they do the switcheroo. You see what I'm saying? Shout out to Robert. He said, this is truck driver. Appreciates these bills, man. I appreciate everybody, man. Hopefully, I mean, everybody enjoy it. It's some history. It's your history. It's our history. And it's the shit that they don't want to talk about in Western education or in mainstream history format, man. So shout out to y'all guys. Let's continue. Shout out to Akeem T in the building, man. Shout out to my Philly native, man. You're going to like this bill, bro.
Forward, I just read, I'm not going to read it again. And she says, okay, particularly noteworthy is her choice of the word exactly. Imagine how it must have been for plantation mistresses to see day in and day out white slave children who look the same as their own white children. Worth noting here is that when Ben Ames Williams edited Chestnut's diary for publication in 1905, he changed the word exactly to the word partly. From the wording of the original quotation, one may infer that it was quite common in antebellum households to have white children and white slave children who all looked like each other. Other accounts of white slaves were published during or after the Civil War. Reverend John Augley lived in the South for 11 years and had both white and black congregations. He told of preaching to slaves, some with red hair and blue eyes, a third of whom were just as white as he was. Dr. Alexander Milton Ross attended a slave auction in New Orleans where many of the slaves were much whiter than the white people who were there. In Lexington, Kentucky, Reverend Calvin Fairbank described a woman who was going to be sold at a slave auction as one of the most beautiful and exquisite young girls one could.
Hold on, it said the white people was whiter than the white people? The white slaves was whiter than the white people there? Who is these white people that they talked about? Are they calling white people at this current time mulattoes and then making the distinguishing fact between white slaves? Just a question.
Some with red hair and blue eyes, a third of whom were just as white as he was. Dr. Alexander Milton Ross attended a slave auction in New Orleans where many of the slaves were much whiter than the white people who were there. In Lexington, Kentucky, Reverend Calvin Fairbank described a woman who was going to be sold at a slave auction as one of the most beautiful and exquisite young girls one could expect to find in freedom or slavery.
Now they saying the white girl was bad to these honkies back in the day, even though she was a slave. So they had pretty slaves. That's what they saying. Oh, you know what I'm saying? Hit that like button, man. Let's try to get 200 people in here before the hour marker, man. I need everybody to hit the like button, thumb up the video, and share the live stream. This is Forgotten Cause of the Civil War, and we're highlighting the white slaves factor that took place during that whole time. So I need y'all to hit the like button. Excuse me. Let's try to get 200 people in here before the hour marker is up, man. Let's go.
Who were there? In Lexington, Kentucky, Reverend Calvin Fairbank described a woman who was going to be sold at a slave auction as one of the most beautiful and exquisite young girls one could expect to find in freedom or slavery. Being only 1/64th African, 1/64th, she was 1/64th African. After the Union had won the Battle of New Bern, North Carolina in 1862, Major General Burnside assigned Vincent Coyer to be superintendent of the poor. Coyer expressed disbelief at the complexions he saw. The light color of many other refugees is a marked peculiarity of the colored peoples of New Bern. I have had men and women apply for work who were so white that I could not believe they had
men and women that applied for work. I want y'all to pay attention to that. Applied for work. Don't we apply for a job or for work? Don't sound like slavery was that bad of a deal, do it? If you can apply yourself to do it, think about it.
The complexions he saw. The light color of many other refugees is a marked peculiarity of the colored peoples of New Bern. I have had men and women apply for work who were so white that I could not believe that they had a particular of Negro blood in their veins. The memoirs of Chestnut, Augie, Ross, Fairbank, and Coiler were published during or after the Civil War. Many other accounts were published all through the period before the Civil War, in which travelers and visitors to the South made note of the white slaves they saw on plantations and at slave auctions. BGS, don't fucking play with me. This is the same man that says you're the result of slave breeding. All right, I'm sorry. Let me get back on course. All of the accounts which follow were readily available to antebellum readers in the North. John Ferdinand Dalziel Smith was an Englishman who visited America during the early 1770s and had his memoirs published in 1784. While in Maryland, he took notice of female slaves who are now become white by their mixture. There are at this time numbers of beautiful girls, many of them as fair as any living, who are absolutely slaves in every sense. Another 18th century traveler was Jacques-Pierre Brissot de Warville, a Frenchman who came to America in 1788. While visiting a school for Negro children in Philadelphia, he saw an octoroon who it was impossible to tell from a white boy. Dr. Jesse Torrey mused on his interesting first experience with white slavery. His book, published in 1817, contains the following account. While at a public house in Fredericktown, Maryland, there came a decently dressed white man of quite a light complexion in company with one who was totally black. After they went away, the landlord observed that the white man was a slave. I asked him with some surprise how that could be possible, to which he replied that he was a descendant by female ancestry of an African slave. He also stated that not far from Fredericktown, there was a slave estate on which there were several white females of as fair and elegant appearance as white ladies in general, held in legal bondage as slaves. Several years later, an English traveler in the South named Isaac Holmes spoke of the promiscuous sexual intercourse white men had with the slave women, which ultimately produced white slaves. Holmes made the observation that did not pass judgment. To an Englishman, it may appear strange that a white man of any feeling should be willing to become the father of slaves, but it does not look through American spectacles. For in the United States, there are many who, by education and association, are gentlemen that are guilty of this shameful practice, and the consequence is that in some instances, there are slaves who are perfectly white. I'm so late on these comments. I'm not going to be able to get the comments right now, so just bear with me, y'all. Captain Frederick Marryat was a British naval officer and novelist who traveled through the South in 1837 and 1838. His account at Louisville, Kentucky is noteworthy. I saw a girl about 12 years old carrying a child, and aware that in a slave state, the circumstances of white people hiring themselves out of service is almost unknown. I inquired of her if she were a slave. To my astonishment, she replied in the affirmative. She was as fair as snow, and it was impossible to detect any admixture of blood from her appearance. In another experience with white slavery, Marryat came across an advertisement for a local runaway slave, which read in part, "Said boy is in a manner white, would be passed by and taken for a white man. His hair is long and straight, like that of a white person." Being a foreigner and not understanding the concept of one drop mulatto, Marryat commented, the expression of "in a manner white" would imply that there was some shame felt in holding a white man in bondage. The expression in the ad was a description, not a value judgment. Reverend Francis Hawley of Connecticut resided in North and South Carolina for 14 years. His thought-provoking account from 1839 offers his telling observation. It is so common for the female slaves to have white children that little or nothing is ever said about. Very few inquiries are made as to who the father is. That same year, Lydia Maria Child wrote, a Missouri newspaper proves that a white man may, without a mistake, be adjudged a slave. A case of a slave suing for his freedom was tried a few days since in Lincoln County, of which the following is a brief statement of particulars. A youth of about 10 years of age sued for his freedom on the ground that he was a free white person. Upon his trial before the jury, he was examined by the jury and two learned physicians, all of whom concurred in the opinion that very little, if any, trace of Negro blood could be discovered by any of the external appearances. All the physiological marks of distinction which characterized the African descent had disappeared. His skin was fair, his hair soft, straight, fine, and white, his eyes blue, but rather disposed to the hazelnut color, nose prominent, the lips small, his head round and well-formed, forehead high and prominent, ears large, the tibia of the leg straight, and feet hollow. Notwithstanding these evidences of his claims, he was proved to be a descendant of a mulatto woman, and that his progenitors on the mother's side had been and still were slaves. Consequently, he was found to be a slave. So
it's talking about the white slaves. So why is people arguing that white slaves didn't exist? They always will say, well, no, there was never no white slaves. There was white servants. There was white servants. There was white servitude. There was white slaves. And the first slaves in America were white people. We can prove this through literature, through slave documents.
Were also those of the whites. The slave keeper told us the day before another girl, still fairer and handsomer, had been sold for $1,500. Elsewhere, she observed a pretty white little boy of about 7 years of age sitting among the tall Negro girls. The child had light hair, the most lovely light brown eyes, and cheeks as red as roses. He was nevertheless the child of a slave mother and was to be sold as a slave. His price was $350. Also seen were the so-called fancy girls for fancy purchasers. They were handsome, fair mulattoes, some of them almost white girls. Traveling the United States about the same time as Bremer was an Englishman named Edward Sullivan. As a foreign visitor in the South, Sullivan was uncomfortable with slavery not being based on color. I quote, I have seen slaves, men and women sold at New Orleans who were very nearly as white as myself, although it is not actually worse to buy or sell a man or woman who is nearly white than it is to sell one shade darker, yet there is something in it more revolting to one's feelings. Oh my God. I'm one of the best to ever do it. I don't give a fuck what nobody says. All right. Other accounts from the 1850s also tell of experiences at slave auctions while in Richmond. Thank you, Conspiracy, for the super chat, bro. While in Richmond, an English barrister named Charles Richard Weld observed a woman and her two little children being offered for sale. The three were sold together. She was a remarkably handsome mulatto, Weld wrote, and her children were nearly, if not fully, as white as the fairest Americans. But as no eloquence on the part of the white auctioneer could raise them above $1,100, the lot was withdrawn. I was afraid the woman alone would have realized more than this amount, but there is a strong aversion against purchasing white children. This aversion was not universal, as illustrated by the Bremer account above and others. During his visit to New Orleans, Reverend Philo Tout.
Did y'all hear that? Hey, if y'all can hear everything in the chat loud and clear, please drop them fire emojis in the chat. Need everybody to support the channel, man. We're dealing with white slaves and the forgotten cause of the Civil War. Make sure you hit that like button, man. Let's keep it going.
Fully as white as the fairest Americans, but as no eloquence on the part of the white auctioneer could raise them above $1,100, the lot was withdrawn. I was informed the woman alone would have realized more than this amount, but there is a strong aversion against purchasing white children. This aversion was not universal, as illustrated by the Bremer account above and others. During his visit to New Orleans, Reverend Philo Tower attended a slave auction and observed a young woman who was one of the most beautiful I think I ever saw, aged from 16 to 20. Though thinly and cheaply dressed, none could be insensible to her beauty. She was much whiter than many, nay, than most of the Anglo-Saxon ladies of medium size and well-developed. Beautiful black hair, black and sparkling eyes that pierced whatever they darted. Rudely drawing the covering from her neck and shoulders, the auctioneer exhibited a bust as plump and purely white as the snow-tinged image of Venus. She was sold for $2,000.
$2,000 in the 1700s is the equivalent to probably about 30 ball, a 30 ball today. That's about $20,000 today. Right? Am I right, y'all? Let me know how much that is. How much is $2,000 in the late 1700s compared to now? How much would that be now today? Shout out to Dre Cobb's Music. Shout out to Dre Cobb's Music for the Cash App donation. Shout out to Dre Cobb's Music supporting the $2 challenge, man. We appreciate that. Make sure y'all support the channel, man. Support the $2 challenge. Don't let Dre be the only one support the channel today. Y'all support. Turn up. Yeah, man.
Charles Mackay, a Scottish journalist, visited a slave auction where he had the following memorable encounter. One man, who to my inexperienced eyes seemed as white as myself, and whom I at once put down in my own mind as an Irishman, one of the purest quality of the county of Cork, got up from his seat as I passed and asked me to buy him. I am a good gardener, Your Honor, said he with an unmistakable brogue. I am also a bit of a carpenter and can look after the horses and do any sort of odd job about the house.
Hold on, Krista. Oh, somebody said 30. Somebody said 300. Somebody said like 30K. Somebody said 300,000. Are y'all sure about that? $2,000 in the 1700s is the equivalent to 300,000 right now. That's crazy. So they're gonna pay $300,000 for a white bitch. Excuse my French. For a hillbilly. You got to be more careful than that. Somebody said 901,000. Hold on, I see a lot of numbers. Which one is the right number, bro? Which one is the right one?
But you are joking, I said. You are an Irishman. My father was put down in my own mind as an Irishman, one of the purest quality of the county of Cork, got up from his seat as I passed and asked me to buy him. I am a good gardener, Your Honor, said he with an unmistakable brogue. I am also a bit of a carpenter and can look after the horses and do any sort of odd job about the house. But you are...
Look, the white man said he naming off his credentials. He naming off his credentials and shit.
Joking, I said. You are an Irishman. My father was an Irishman, he said. At this moment, the slave dealer and owner of the depot came up. Is there not a mistake here? I inquired. This is a white man. His mother was a nigger. He replied, we have sometimes much whiter men for sale than he is. Look at his hair and lips. There is no mistake about him. Mackay was a Scotsman who had experienced a virtually white brogue-speaking Irishman as a slave. Feeling disgusted, he related that he longed to get into the open air to breathe the purer atmosphere. A similar reaction to that of Mackay was had by a Mr. C, identified only by this first initial, who visited a slave auction in Georgia with his friend, New England physician Charles G. Parsons. The following is their particularly eloquent and telling account. We saw a handbill in the barroom in which 44 male slaves were advertised for sale. Stepping out into the street, we found those girls sitting on the sidewalks. At the farther end of the row was a very beautiful girl, apparently perfectly white and neatly dressed. The moment Mr. C looked at her, he exclaimed, "What do you think that white girl is sitting there with those Negroes for?" "I presume she is a slave, sir," said I. "That can't be," replied Mr. C. "Just look at her. Why, I never saw a prettier girl in my life." Now,
The little freaky ass old white man, like, yeah, I ain't never seen no slave like that. I'm about to buy that. No, his big freaky ass trying to buy that white slave. Listen to him. Listen to how he responds.
"I presume she is a slave, sir," said I. "That can't be," replied Mr. C. "Just look at her. Why, I never saw a prettier girl in my life."
Yeah, he responded.
Now, Mr. C had heard that likely quadroons are held as slaves and sold in the market, but he had never believed that a young lady so entirely American, so elegant in form and feature, so intellectual in appearance, with pure blue eyes and the perfect red and white Caucasian complexion, was in the same degraded condition as the African girl. He was unprepared to believe it. When I said to him, "She is a slave, sir." Still incredulous, Mr. C stepped up to the drover and asked, "Is that white girl a slave, sir?" "That's not a white girl. She's a nigger, sir," replied the drover. "What do you ask for her?" inquired Mr. C. I was offered.
Damn, they called the white girl a nigger. He said, "Hey, what you doing with that white girl? Look, he trying to buy her and shit." He said, "That's a nigger." You know what I'm saying? Hey, God, that's crazy. Y'all hear this shit?
Still incredulous, Mr. C stepped up to the drover and asked, "Is that white girl a slave, sir?" "That's not a white girl. She's a nigger, sir," replied the drover. "What do you ask for her?" inquired Mr. C. I was offered $1,800 for the last night. I want to. Is that white?
He said, "Is that white girl a slave?" Listen to him.
Same degraded condition as the African girl. He was unprepared to believe it. When I said to him, "She is a slave, sir." Still incredulous, Mr. C stepped up to the drover and asked, "Is that white girl a slave, sir?" "That's not a white girl. She's a nigger, sir," replied the drover. "What do you ask for her?" inquired Mr. C. I was offered $1,800 for the last night. I want $2,000 for her. "Why can't that white girl?" "That isn't a white girl. That's a nigger, sir. I tell you."
And mind you, the word nigga is only applied to American people, I thought. Think about it. This shit is getting tricky now. Who is the white nigger with the blue eyes and the straight hair and the white and red Caucasian skin described? You know what I mean?
At the same time, he removed a woolen cap from her head, which exposed the light brown hair, and added, "You see, her hair is waved. This is regarded as evidence that African blood is mingled with." $1,800 for the last night. I want $2,000 for her. "Why can't that white girl?" "That isn't a white girl. That's a nigger, sir. I tell you." At the same time, he removed a woolen cap from her head, which exposed the light brown hair, and added, "You see, her hair is waved. This is regarded as evidence that African blood is mingled with the white." Mr. C had now become excited, and he exclaimed, "Well then, can that white nigger do more than you, or one of your black niggers? Then you ask so much for her?" "Oh no," replied the drover, and perceiving that Mr. C did not comprehend in the superior value of female beauty to physical ability in a slave, he added, "But you know she is a high-priced fancy girl." "By heavens," Mr. C replied, "T, is this bad?"
Yeah, it sounds like some pimping going on. He like, "Listen, bitch, she don't do nothing better than a black nigga. But guess what? She's a fancy white bitch, and she gonna go for that cheese. You know what I'm saying? Give me $2,000 for my little white bitch, nigga. It ain't even no deal. Either you gonna give me $2,000 for the white bitch. You know what I'm saying? For real. That's what Top Cat ass be doing. He got charged with that. Joseph Preston Henson, aka Top Cat, got charged with that. White slavery, no bullshit. Let's get back to the bill, man. Hey, if y'all can hear everything loud and clear in the chat, man, drop them fire emojis, thumb up the video, and support the channel, man. Let's get it.
She did not comprehend in the superior value of female beauty to physical ability in a slave. He added, but you know she is a high-priced fancy girl. By heavens, Mr. C replied. T is this bad, and turning me with his clenched hands raised towards the heavens. He added, I will never say another word against abolitionists.
You hear what he said? He said he clenched his hands, he balled them up in a fist and put them to the sky and said, I will never, ever support you abolitionists. This nigga throwing a fit in the street. Listen to this shit, man.
Ask so much for her? Oh, no, replied the drover, and perceiving that Mr. C did not comprehend in the superior value of female beauty to physical ability in a slave, he added, but you know she is a high-priced fancy girl. By heavens, Mr. C replied. T is this bad, and turning me with his clenched hands raised towards the heavens, he added, I will never say another word against abolitionists so long as God lets me live. With so many white slaves throughout the South, it is not surprising the curiosity would exist as to their ability to escape North and their pass into white society. Such an inquiry was made by Frederick Law Olmsted, a reporter for the New York Times who traveled extensively throughout the slave states. During a visit to the plantation in the spring of 1854, he recorded a dialogue he had with two overseers. One of them pointed out a slave girl while she was working in the field and said, that one is pure white. You see her hair. It was straight and sandy. It was not uncommon, he said, to see slaves so white that they could not be easily distinguished from pure-blooded whites. Now, said I, if that girl should dress herself well and run away, would she be suspected of being a slave? I could see nothing myself by which to distinguish her, as she passed from an ordinary poor white girl. Oh, yes, you might not know her if you got to the North, but any of us would know her. How? By her language and manners. But if she had been brought up as a house servant, perhaps not in that case. The other thought there would be no difficulty. You could always see a slave girl quail when you looked in her eyes. Olmsted also took note of the white slaves in a group of people color he saw in Richmond who were dressed in Sunday finery. Nearly a fourth part seemed to me to have lost all African peculiarity of feature. There was no indication of their belonging to a subject race, except they were invariably gave way to the white people they met. As explained earlier, the term mulatto could be used to denote a person who even looked white in appearance. The term quadroon or quatroon, even though literally means one who is 3/4 white, when used in New Orleans could mean the same thing. Visitors to that city commented on the virtual whiteness of many of the so-called quadroons. Isaac Holmes, an Englishman who traveled in America for 4 years, recollected although the term quatroon would infer a person of 3/4 white extraction, yet all between the color of a mulatto and a white acquire in New Orleans this appellation. Some indeed are to all appearances perfectly white. George William Featherstone left from Maryland and toured throughout the slave states. He also saw the New Orleans quadroons. A woman may be as fair as any European and have no symptoms of Negro. He also saw the New Orleans blood in her. Father Stonehaw also stated, but if he can be proved that she has one drop of Negro blood in her veins, the laws do not permit her to contract a marriage with a white man, and as her children would be illegitimate, the men do not contract marriages with them. Reverend Philo Tower from the New England wrote The Life of a Mulatto Girl, or a quadroon, as they called, with some having clear, beautiful white skin with rosy cheeks, making the very perfections of loveliness and beauty forbidden by the rules of society to hold rank above the lowest black slave. The actor George Vandenhoff said of the New Orleans quadroon, some of them showed no tinge of their descent at all, but could boast complexions not blondes, certainly, but of Anglo-American whiteness. Yet all of these girls had in their blood the fatal taint of Africa's sun, though in some it was diluted by admixture to an infinitesimal point that required the nicest eye to detect it, if indeed it could be detected at all. Although the first person's eyewitness accounts of white slaves throughout the South have an element of redundancy running through them, it is imperative to keep in mind that they were all contained in books, which were readily available to antebellum readers in the North. Travel accounts made for popular reading, and these books, many of them by famous writers of the day, were no doubt read to the great extent. White slaves, as seen through the eyes of others, brought the issue of white slavery to the awareness of many Northerners who would not have known or been conscious of it otherwise. In addition to travel accounts of white slaves, newspaper advertisements for white runaway slaves made the issue of white slavery that much more real. Although originally appearing in newspapers in the South, they were also collected and published in abolitionist and other literature in the North, literature that was particularly geared toward people interested in ending slavery. Lydia Maria Child published The Patriarchal Institution in 1860, in which she included 4 pages of advertisements of white people for white runaway slaves. William J. proclaimed that people at the North are disposed to be incredulous when they hear of white slaves at the South, and yet little reflection would convince them not only that there must be such slaves under present system, but that in the process of a time, a large proportion of slaves must be as white as their masters. Were there no other sources of information respecting the complexion of the Southern slaves?
Why don't they talk about this white slave history, you guys? Why don't they talk about this white slave history? They only want to shame you for being a slave and get beat up and get tortured and whooped to death, and oftentimes not getting the correct pay or justice. But this is white history as well. There was white slaves often got treated worse than the black slaves, according to documentations, which we'll get into on another note. Let's continue.
The newspaper's notice of runaway slaves would almost be abundantly confirm our assertions. The advertisements cited by Jay include the words white man, white boy, white, white, quite white, and clear white. Reverend Charles Eliot included similar advertisements in his book, Sinfulness of American Slavery. During 1855 and 1856, the American Anti-Slavery Society published a series of pamphlets, one of which was entitled White Slavery in the United States. 3 of its 8 pages list newspaper notices for runaway white slaves. Nigga. Let me get, before I finish this chapter, this is insane. I haven't read this book in decades. Let me get to these comments. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What I miss? What I miss? This book used to be $4,000. This PDF of this book I'm reading used to be $4 fucking grand. It is no longer available on Amazon. And let me give a quick shout out to Sir Tice. Shout out to Sir Tice. Sir Tice is the inspiration for this. Because Sir Tice reached out to me on IG. I didn't even know he even listened to my shit. And we discussed this. And so shout out to him, man. Like, yo, I be talking my shit, and I really don't be thinking motherfuckers be listening to me like that. So I'm humbled. But he sparked this idea for me because I've never heard anybody actually read the book. Now I know there's audiobooks. Don't get me wrong, there's audiobooks you can find of this shit. I'm just saying, I've never heard any, you know what I'm saying? Like a motherfucker just really open this shit up and read it. You know what I'm saying? Like motherfuckers hoard this shit. Like motherfuckers are not trying to give you the information out of this book. I mean, I remember hearing this book decades ago, like this book, man, you know, the slavery thing, it wasn't black slaves, it was white slaves. And I was just like, really? And then when I finally got my hands on the book, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, they lied to us. So let me get into the real quick, the Emancipation Proclamation. One of the definitions of emancipation is transfer. Okay, I said this before. The Emancipation Proclamation was merely a transfer. It was a title transfer. Okay, you had to remove the title of slave from white folks and put it solely on melanated people. That's all that shit was. Don't argue me with, don't debate me with this. I'm just not going to listen to anything else. You understand? I'm just not gonna. You're just not gonna. You're not. You're just not. Okay. So let me get back into this. Let me finish this chapter up, and then we'll discuss amongst ourselves. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. The suppressed book about slavery, written by George Washington Carleton in 1857, also contains many such advertisements. White slavery was read about in the accounts of travelers who visited the South and in Southern newspaper advertisements for white runaway slaves. Another source of information concerning white slavery was articles in newspapers. A notable piece entitled White Slaves concerning a white woman and her 2 children who were offered for sale at a slave auction appeared in 1821 in a Maryland newspaper, the Niles Weekly Register.
Damn, 2 white girls and 2 white children in 1821? Let's talk about this.
Newspapers. A notable piece entitled White Slaves concerning a white woman and her 2 children who were offered for sale at a slave auction appeared in 1821 in a Maryland newspaper, the Niles Weekly Register. This woman and children were as white as any of our citizens. Indeed, we scarcely ever saw a child with fairer or clearer complexion than the younger one. There was something so revolting to the feelings at the sight of this woman and children. It brought to recollection so forcibly the morality of slave-holding states that not a person was found to make an offer for them, even though many in the South expressed an aversion to buying white slave children. The feeling was certainly not universal. In fact, for some, the pretense of a white mulatto child was unnecessary, and children known to be completely white were bought and sold outright. William Chambers traveled to Kentucky and Virginia in 1853 and noted that it is understood that members of purely Anglo-American children pass into slavery. Many of them are carried to the markets of the South, where a good price for them can be readily obtained. The White Slaves article is interesting from another standpoint because it questioned the Pardis rule. In referring to the white children no one wanted to purchase because of their white color, the article stated the legal maxim of par has made them slaves for life, and the same maxim will make the offspring of these children slaves. Who can think of this and not shudder? Ought there not be some limitation, some bounds fixed to this principle? We trust we shall not see a second attempt to sell them in this town. An editorial comment followed. White is the fashion in the United States, and surely some measures should be adopted to cause the color to be respected, seeing that we depend so much upon it. God damn. Oh, it just gave me chills. Oh, wow. What makes this article so unusual is that it was originally published in Kentucky and was reprinted in Maryland, both slave states. Of course, back in 1821, the organized abolitionist movement had yet to really be established, and things were relatively calm between the North and South. Such an editorial was no doubt dismissed as harmless dissent. As tension mounted in the decades which followed, however, publishing an article which questioned slavery being based on the partish rule, the immutable legal principle held universally throughout the South, would have been unthinkable. The Chicago Daily Tribune, a popular newspaper, had an interesting article entitled "A White Slave." In an 1856 issue, a white female slave had escaped from Missouri and was given refuge by 2 Germans in Illinois. Slave catchers captured the girl and arrested the Germans despite their claim that they thought her to be free because she was white. 1 German escaped, the other was jailed. Quoting from the Quincy Republican, the newspaper which first reported the story, the Tribune declared, "You see the legitimate, the unavoidable fruits of the slave system in our sister state. Do you wish to incur for yourselves or your friends in the territory the penalty of 5 years imprisonment in the penitentiary for extraordinary crime of being unable to distinguish a white free woman and a white slave?"
Do y'all understand what's going on? I need y'all to pay attention, man. Hit that like button, man.
Slavery, which related how to New Orleans under false pretenses. White woman sold as a slave, where Violet Ludlow was sold several times despite her legitimate claim that she was white. A white girl nearly sold into slavery, which related how an orphan named Madeline, aged about 9 years, a lovely girl, delicately formed, white as the purest of Caucasian race, was to be sold at auction but reprieved with the intention that a jury shall pass upon her blood. The Sally Miller case told readers about how 11 jurors found the defendant to be a white German. Oh, hold on. What do you want, Shania? Where's my mom? I don't know. She ran. She went to go give me some meat or get groceries. Okay, well, she's not here. Well, I guess I keep. Okay, bye. City girls leaving the building, y'all. Say bye. Bye, y'all. All right. My stepdaughter is a real live city girl. For real. I have JT and Carisha, like right there. Oh my goodness. Let me get back to this. Okay. The Sally, her mother. And speaking of Georgia, where the event had occurred, the newspaper said this fact proves that white slavery in Georgia is not so uncommon that a case of it likely to excite any remark. Slavery has no prejudice against color. Another piece was entitled "White Apparently White Surrender to Slavery." It had to do with a white woman named Pulaski, who was claimed as a fugitive slave even though she had been living as a free person for more than 12 years. And an Arkansas white girl sold as slave, Alexina Morrison's lawyer argued that she had not claimed her freedom because she had brown hair or fair skin or blue eyes, but because she had been born free and was kidnapped. Likewise, in white slavery in Alabama, readers were told of a white girl from Georgia named Patience Hicks, who was kidnapped and sold into slavery. 3 different accounts were presented in an article entitled "White Slavery." And the first, a 7-year-old white boy named Washington, was placed in the care of a Negro woman when his mother became ill. He was subsequently kidnapped and sold into slavery. And the second, an aristocratic Virginia couple had an illegitimate love child named Eliza, who was placed in Negro quarters and raised there from infancy. She was subsequently sold as a slave. And the third, a white girl was purchased out of slavery for $400 and then freed. Elwood Harvey, a Pennsylvanian, attended a slave auction in Virginia and with some friends, and wrote of his visit in a letter which was printed in the Pennsylvania Freeman. The Anti-Slavery Bugle republished the letter, in which part read, "A white boy about 12 years old was placed upon the stand. His hair was brown and straight, his skin exactly the same hue as the other white persons, and no discoverable trace of Negro feature in his countenance. Some coarse and vulgar jests were passed on his color, and $5 bid for him. But the auctioneer said that is not enough to begin for such a likely young nigger."
Damn, the little young nigger go for $5, but the little white bitch go for $2.
Several remarked they would not have left him as a gift. Some said a white nigger was worth. Some said a white nigger was more trouble than he was worth. One
A white nigger was more trouble than he was worth. Damn. That's how I feel about white people too. Shit.
a likely young nigger. Several remarked they would not have left him as a gift. Some said a white nigger was worth. Some said a white nigger was more trouble than he was worth. One man said it was wrong to sell white people. He was sold for about $250. Earlier in the letter, Harvey wrote that my friends were not abolitionists before and pitied my credulity when I told them the horrors of slavery. But 1 week in Old Dominion has added 2 staunch adherents to our cause. I wish every pro-slavery man and woman in the North could witness one slave auction. You know what? I don't even need to continue. I don't even need to continue. Listen. White people in the North had to go free their brothers and sisters in the South. They had nothing to do with black folk. I'm sorry. Can we please kill this narrative that the Civil War was over black slaves? It was not. It was to free the white slaves. Okay? White folk in the North was not having that shit. You understand? Okay? Whew, that was a long read. But that was chapter 2. And then, I think tomorrow and the next day, I'll cover chapters 5. It was some interesting chapters that I really wanted to touch on. So let me look it up. It's a deep read. Okay. So we did chapter 2, white slaves. We're going to cover chapter 1, what constitutes.
So we're going to get into the next half of the bill, man. Let's get it.
Hey, we're back.
Let's skip it up a little bit.
Second way had to do with the belief that the Southern oligarchy desired to nationalize slavery and eventually enslave white laborers in the North. At face value, this notion seems preposterous, but in truth, that is precisely what many believe the South ultimately intended to do. The first quotation in the epigraph above was written by George Fitzhugh, who, although an oddity when compared to other Southern writers, was nonetheless of great importance. As will be seen, his unique views on slavery left a profound impression on Lincoln and Northern senators and congressmen. Fitzhugh was an anonymous editorialist for the Daily Richmond Enquirer, the foremost political newspaper in the South. The second quotation in the epigraph appeared in one of his editorials. Many Northerners pointed to these 2 statements, along with others, as evidence that the South did indeed intend to nationalize slavery and ultimately enslave white people in the North. Both first appeared in Southern publications, but were then quoted and re-quoted many times from the mid-1850s to the eve of the Civil War in Northern newspapers, books, and even congressional speeches and dialogues. These 2 quotations and others will be repeated throughout this chapter in an effort to convey to the modern reader a sense of the impact their frequent repetition must have had on readers in the antebellum North. Not every Northerner, of course, read every source in which these quotations and others appeared, but the fact still remains that they were often published. Certainly not every date and source is reproduced herein, but a good representation has been included in order that the point be made. The statements from the Southern press, which were repeated in the North, as well as other words which expressed the emotional depth of how people in both the North and the South were feeling during this time, provide a profound insight into the anxieties and tensions that were continuing to mount as the Civil War approached. Figurative white slavery was one thing, that is to say, free white Northerners being forced to abide by the political will of the pro-slavery South, being legally forced to assist in the capture of fugitive slaves in the free states of the North is a prime example. Although a careful analysis of Republican campaign literature and other political material from 1856 and 1860 shows that many Northerners really believed the South wanted to literally enslave free white laborers in the North. History professors with whom this issue has been discussed insist that when white slavery is alluded to or spoken of directly, it is always figurative white slavery. The South never desiring to actually enslave Northern whites in a literal physical sense. The fact of the matter is, however, is that figurative white slavery was seen by many as just the beginning. Literal white slavery was thought to be a very real possibility. From a historical perspective, it seemed only natural for the South to desire the nationalization of slavery and have designs on enslaving Northern white laborers. The institution of slavery had existed in every one of the Northern states throughout the colonial period. The research of Michael A. Hoffman II shows that such slavery was not limited to Black slavery. During the 17th and 18th centuries, white political prisoners and petty criminals from Britain were sold and brought to the colonies in chattel slavery between the early 1770s and 1804. Rhode Island, Vermont, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey, all of which had slavery, passed outright abolition and gradual emancipation laws. During the 1850s, the South's plan to nationalize slavery was merely to reintroduce it into the North, where it had been previously existed just 50 to 75 years earlier. As Fitzhugh said, slavery will everywhere be abolished or everywhere be reinstituted. With so many white-parted slaves in the South to begin with, the idea of expanding slavery to include white laborers in the North moved slavery from a matter of color to a matter of class. Southern politicians frequently pointed out that the slavery in Greece and Rome was based on social status, not on color, and the slavery in the Bible was not Negro slavery. The idea of enslaving whites in the North, first figuratively and then literal, was not a new one. As William Goodell declared back in 1836, the object of the South is to destroy the free labor of the North and reduce.
Hey man, hit that like button, thumb up the video, support the channel. This is the second half. This is Forgotten Cause of the Civil War, the actual book, chapter 6. We get into we can kind of explain some things in this. We already brought out a lot of the facts that white people was heavily enslaved in the South, often at some numbers more than the Negro slave. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, man, thumb up the video if y'all want to support the channel. Cash App tags at the bottom right of the screen. PayPal information is ticking across at the bottom of the screen. Make sure y'all share the live stream. Hit that like button. If you're not following me on Instagram, it's at the bottom right of the screen by the grizzly bear. Big_Aboriginal_power. Make sure y'all go follow me on Instagram.
For laboring citizens to the moral, first figuratively and then literal, was not a new one. As William Goodell declared back in 1836, the object of the South is to destroy the free labor of the North and reduce our laboring citizens to the moral and physical conditions of their slaves. Russell B. Nye has expressed the basic rationale in the following explanation. If slavery were to ever extend it to the white man, the laborer was warned. He would be the first to be enslaved, since his was the weakest political and economic position in society. Let me say that again. If slavery were ever extended to the white man, the laborer was warned he would be the first to be enslaved, since his was the weakest political and economic position in society. Such, it was claimed, was the actual intention of the slaveholding South, which was the support of the powerful industrial interests of the North, was gaining dominance over the national government. The published proceedings of the Rhode Island Anti-Slavery Convention in 1836 referred to white slavery and the white laborer. If human beings may be enslaved and on so frivolous and impious a pretext as the color their creator has given them their skins, white men may be enslaved. The northern white laborer has been told that his freedom is a curse from which the southern slave is kindly and righteously exempted. Color is become an item of little account in the modern argument. So as to the early 1830s, the idea had taken root that slavery was becoming an issue of social class rather than color. Whites could be enslaved as well as blacks. We commenced the present struggle to obtain the freedom of the slave. We are compelled to continue it to preserve our own. So stated William J. in his letter of resignation from the New York State Anti-Slavery Society in 1836. A year earlier, his peer James G. Birney wrote, "The contest has become one not alone of freedom for the black, but of freedom for the white." Likewise, in the 1839, William Goodell declared in his newspaper, The Anti-Slavery Lecturer, that the Southern statesmen who have sought and predicted the perpetuity of the slavery system has predicted that the laboring white population would also become slaves and have signified their hearty consent to such a result. We do not recollect a single Southern statesman or eminent Southern writer who has pretended to believe that slavery, if it continues to exist, will be confined to the blacks. Slavery must cease, or else large masses of white people will become slaves. No one except the Northerner ever conceives of slavery as being restricted to color, but to them. Whenever the idea of slavery is presented, it is always rolls up in imagination a dense cloud of black people. They forget that the slaves among the Romans were chiefly whites, that the helots of Sparta were of the same color, that Bible arguments for slavery, especially in Paul's day, are arguments for enslaving white people, that our English forefathers saw their own nation and color enslaved by the Irish, that the feudal servitude of Scotland and all of Northern Europe was the enslavement of white people. Wow. Earlier, Goodell commented after quoting from such a speech on slavery by Professor Thomas R. Dew of the College of William and Mary, in plain English, the day will come when all the laboring people throughout the whole country will become the slaves of the rich. The freedom of the white laboring class in the North was not safe, a sentiment expressed back in 1839. In a later publication, Goodell pointed out that Governor McDuffie of South Carolina, in his message to the legislature in December 1835, predicted that the body of the laboring people of the North would be virtually reduced to slavery within 25 years. In a March 1844 issue of the Herald of Freedom, Chancellor William Harper of South Carolina was quoted as saying, "It is as much in the order of the nature that men should enslave each other as the animals should prey upon each other." An editorial followed. We have to fend for themselves. They were taken care of. Messed up. I'm sorry. Let's run that back real quick. It will be observed in the above abominable sentiment of a Southern judge, no allusion is made to color as constituting a barrier to the encroachments of tyranny. In fact, that distinction, if it ever did exist, is fast fading away into polluted regime under the operations of a system that places the children of the same father in the incongruous and unnatural relation of master and slave, and that mingles the worst passions of human nature with the tears of blood. They have been so accustomed to the spectacle of white slaves that they cannot contemplate Northern operatives, the farmers and mechanics of the free states, in any other life than as the legitimate property of the capitalist to be bought and worked and flogged and sold at the will of the pleasure of the master. The year 1854 was a very significant one for the South and pro-slavery interests. In addition to the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, saw the publication of a book that was to have profound ramifications all during the 6 years leading up to the Civil War. The first quotation in the epigraph of this chapter came from George Fitzhugh's Sociology for the South, or The Failure of Free Society. In the Union, there were two political ideologies, free and slave, totally at odds with one another. Fitzhugh talked about free society in the North being a failure and universal slavery, not based on color, being the only successful alternative. 10 years ago, we became satisfied that slavery, black or white, was right and necessary. We advocated this doctrine in very many essays, sometimes editorially and sometimes as a communicant. The Fredericksburg Recorder and Richmond Examiner will testify to this fact. He explained that more than half of the white citizens of the North are common laborers, either in the field or as a body or house servants. They perform the same services that our slaves do.
So I kind of want to stop that bill, get into another one. I want to kind of give y'all a sneak peek of what I got coming up this week, man. So I'm gonna kind of get into that bag real quick. Let's get into that real quick. Shout out to everybody in the chat, man. Before we get to the other half of this video, man, make sure y'all thumb up the video, support the channel, man. I need y'all to thumb up the video and support the channel, man. All right. Let's get to it.
Pressburg is synonymous with Prester. Okay, so the people we refer to as the children of Israel in the form of the royalty of Europa, whether it be James or the rest of these type of people, right? A Presbyterian, right? Pressburg, this is the foundation of prosper, but Pressburg is synonymous with Prester. Okay, so a Presbyterian is somebody who has agreed to take the communion to take the body and the blood of Christ, i.e., whoever is Christ. You know what I'm saying? Why you understand how the old Christians is different than the ones that we've been taught as Christians. When you think Christian, you got to start thinking like the Templars and them type of people. Not even them, but you got to think of like the Nestorian, like Abyssinian, Batian, Sabaean, Ethiopian, Russian, Roman. Those are the Romans. Those are the Roman Christians, are descended again from those ancient ones that was practicing the other marrying outside of their thing. So wigs synonymous with that. So because the vibration of the society was one that did not support the extension of the nervous system past the internal, it would do things to break down the situation. So when these people came in and bust down all of the etheric energy and all of that, it slowed it up enough for them now to catch up in terms of their hair and all of that. So like I said, having your natural hair, letting it grow out was a symbol that you were a peak human being, like a real first round human. Most of the other people that was dealing with the admixtures, they couldn't grow their hair like. You understand what I'm saying? So read the so-called Bible, right? I believe it's in Isaiah. It says the Lord will make bald crown of the head of the daughters of Zion. The Lord will discover their hair. Therefore, the Lord will smite the scab crown of the head of the daughters of Zion. The Lord will lay bare their secret parts, but I will punish them. I will shave their heads and leave them bald. And it says, this is the punishment. The adulterous woman honors her husband not. What does that sound like? does that sound like? That sounds just like what just happened, right? And she was in green, right? Meaning green with envy, because everybody around her, you know what I'm saying? Look at the ritual. Everyone around her got their own hair. Well, except Lapita, she suffered from it too, because these are the daughters of Zion that have been cursed because they honored not their husband, i.e. their father, i.e. the masculine principle in their life. So they also live in a society that uses high etheric energy weapons against them in terms of also their diet, which then strips away their internal mechanisms, right, which stops them from growing due to the amount of stress in their lymphatic system that they don't realize. So what do? They do what the ancient Egyptians did, right? Look what they did. So they go create wigs, right? They go and create wigs, meaning that they take the hair from somebody else. Right? So that means somebody else who got hair gotta lose their hair. You see what's happening? You see what's happening? So the daughters of Zion, instead of repenting, what do? They go further, they double down. They go further into it. Which then does what? Curse them more. Because half of their life is wrapped up in their hair that's not even theirs. Or they're put in the circumstance to just, like I said, be bald, which is nothing wrong with that. However, like I said, spiritually, it has something else going on that people are not doing knowledge to. I'm talking about the spiritual and how it plays out in the physical. I'm not getting into whether you should do it or not, whether it's wrong. It's not what I'm saying. Isaiah, I'm gonna find it by the end of the class. I had it written down. Just the order of Christ. So of the order of Christ, they had a certain way of doing things. They were warriors. They were killers. Their Christ required blood to sit at his right hand. Understand? And they then created the status in which they would have one king would then represent their connection to the original Christ. Because see, there's the Christ within us. That's our true Christ, our true consciousness. Then there was the God they were talking about as that. And then there was the anti-version of that came allegedly from the line that they referred to as Esau. Right? And Esau, right, his line, them people were descendant of from one of these. So Ham, as they like to equate to so-called black people, the youngest son of Noah, born probably 96 years after the flood. So look at that. If we would turn the 9 and the 6 to face each other, that would be the symbol for Cancer, right? And you know, Cancer is the crab, and the crab live in the water. You dig what I'm saying? And this is after the flood. Okay? So that's a connection in that. 96 years.
Hey man, make sure y'all support the channel, man. Make sure y'all support the channel. Make sure y'all support the channel, man. You know what I mean? Hit that like button, thumb up the video. Shout out to all the American Aborigines in the chat, man. I want to say peace and blessings to everybody tapping in, man. It's good to see y'all in the chat. Shout out to Emperor Goddess. You know what I mean? Mamas. You know what I'm saying? Namas. Shout out to you in the chat. Shout out to Tariqnasheed. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Make sure y'all support the channel, man. Thumb up the video. Very important for you. Thumb up the video. Share the live stream. Support the channel. You know what I'm saying? Let's get it, man. Turn up a little bit, man. Let's get it cracking. Don't let Dre Cobb's music be the only one to support the channel, man.
That's a connection in that. 96 years before the flood, and 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. But not the Negroes. Egyptians, the Ethiopians, the Libyans, which is the Americans, Egyptians and Libyans, basically American, and Canaanites, all that's American, and Canaanites. His indecency when his father lay drunk and brought a curse upon Canaan, who was Ham's son, because Ham had sex with his father's wife, thus establishing incest in the new world, the hierarchy of that so-called nobility that was going to rule over everything through maritime law, which is the law of the sea that everybody was under, right? Yes, very good. It's in Deuteronomy where it says, thou shalt not remove thy neighbor's landmark. Landmark, yes, is the stones and the castles and the ruins, but that's also the people that mark themselves to the land. Yes, but remember, over here was the land that was severed. Severed. That's where this dude come in. If I can ever find the damn picture, excuse me. So in the enemy system, there's more than one Christ. You know that. Whoever's ruling at the time and protecting what they refer to as Christendom is Christ. Understand? So Constantine was Christ. You know what I'm saying? Caesar Borgia was Christ. You know what I mean? Even made Genghis Khan Christ, and he was not even Christian. He was the only one providing a fight against what you call it, the Moors, the traditional Moors, who were fighting for the natural system, because this is still a battle between Cain and Abel. You know what I'm saying? It's really a battle between the anode system, right, and the cathode system, which people think. So in this system, that's when Septimius came around. He came around allegedly maybe about 200 years after the fall of what Hebrew people, our people, refer to as fall of the temple. And he established new boundaries of what they refer to as, what we today refer to as the Roman Empire. He's the one that went into, he made agreements with the Germans. They referred to as the wild Germanians, because anybody that wasn't Roman was seen as a barbarian. These Romans, the Septimius Severus, these Romans that we're talking about at this time are pagans. And so amongst them, a new so-called pagan derivative religion derived from the Hebrews, that based on Yehoshua, and boom, they adopt that. But remember, they already got their own Christ. So what they do, or what Septimius do, is say, well, if this is what they're doing, it's best then that we remake everything so that.
What's going on, April Dawn? Good to see you in the chat, sis. Ain't seen you in a minute. Shout out to April Dawn, y'all. Make sure y'all show sister some love in the chat. Shout out to April Dawn.
And we control it through the Roman law. And so all the Roman prophecies that Septimius Severus went into, all the prophecies that he went into and had sway over, they basically initiated the revamping of whatever gods that was there already, and eventually laid the groundwork for them to unify under Christ. So by the time the Romans became
Come on, man. Make sure y'all support the channel, man. We gotta have some people support the channel. I need y'all to run them likes up right now. I ain't even about to finish the video. I'm gonna need y'all to hit them likes, share the live stream, and support the channel, man. Y'all gotta hit some likes. Let me fuck around, roll up another wood or something. Hit that like button, support the channel. You know what I'm saying? We got like 150 people in here. We supposed to have like 200 in here. We slacking today, man. They playing with my algorithm. Cause we ain't hitting them like buttons like that, man. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Appreciate everybody for coming on. Shout out to the Bomb Mom C3 in the building too. Shout out to the Bomb Mom C3 in the building. It's 145 likes. That's good. So we up on the likes then. All right, looking pretty swift on the likes. Shout out to everybody in the chat, man. Hit that like button. Let's get it, man. Support the channel. Let's go.
That was dead already. And eventually laid the groundwork for them to unify under Christ. So by the time the Romans became Christians, remember, they cut off from the western portion of the empire. He's moving everything over here. And then he's adopting or building fortifications to keep the people Roman. And eventually they break into 10 different tribes. You know what I'm saying? These 10 tribes become the 10 nations, the original nations of Europe, which is still West Asia. But he is a Christ. He's Christ. See what I'm saying? Sept means what? It means right. If it means 7, then why is it the 9th month? Because it was through severance that they was able to born things into the new world, into the new existence. You know what I'm saying? Because from Severus, he then established the Severan dynasty. You know what I'm saying? In which his son then was ruling. Hadrian and them was ruling, controlling everything and remaking everything. This is Hadrian. This is Hadrian. These are Roman Christians who eventually become Roman Catholics. But at this time, they're more closer to the Nestorian, Abyssinian, warlike part of it. You get what I'm saying? Had another king, but he was overthrown because he was down with the real moves. He was down with us. They betrayed him. So in a second. Look at that. You see what I'm saying? These are the people that was ruling over, these are the people that he was fighting against, I should say. Well, yes. Was also fighting against this dude, even though they was essentially like cousins. pass. It's through. So in America, they had a breakdown by which people couldn't function from constant attacks. There was constantly people out there throwing like different campaigns and stuff. So it got to the point where it fractured, like I said, the Roman Kingdom. So you had a dude named Theodoric.
Hey man, I'm gonna end that video right here, man. I need everybody to thumb up the video, support the channel. Thumb up the video, support the channel, man. That's it on that audio, man. It's over with, man. We'll get to that in the next one, man. Make sure y'all hit the like button, support the channel. It's your brother Big Aboriginal Power, man. Make sure y'all support the channel, man. Oh, shout out to Elijah, man. Shout out to Elijah D for supporting the channel, for sending in the Cash App donation. Shout out to Elijah D. Yeah, man. Shout out to Elijah D. Shout out to everybody else in the chat that supported the channel today, too, man. They hit the like button, that shared it. Shout out to all y'all, man. Appreciate everybody for tapping in. Make sure you hit that like button. With that being said, it's your brother Aboriginal Power. This is the Wake and Bake Bill. Make sure y'all be safe. Be aware, stay vigilant, stay dangerous. It's your brother Big Aboriginal Power. We out. Peace.
Suave on the track.
Whatever it takes. Alleyway.
Coco, this your season right now.
They won't see me. They won't let me, yeah. I gotta sleep with one eye open, been making me nervous. I take a piss, my hand on the strap. I know the odds wanna murder. I got a feeling, keep my stomach paranoid, yeah. I won't let them, yeah. They won't see me, yeah. I gotta sleep with one eye open, been making me nervous. I take a piss, my hand on the strap. I know the odds wanna murder. I got a feeling, keep my stomach paranoid, yeah. I can't let them, yeah. They won't see me, yeah. I put attention, all of my blood, all of my veins. They started with perky, now that hair right up his veins. You started with serving, now them drugs drove you insane. Started with dealing, I grew up with killers, they taught me the game. I got some niggas that die behind, and that shit won't never the same. I know some niggas that lie behind, and that bullet had his name. Ain't no reason to cry about, cause that shit won't never change. MTF the 4th and P, my niggas can't get out the game. I gotta sleep with one eye open, been making me nervous. I take a piss, my hand on the strap. I know the odds wanna murder. I got a feeling, keep my stomach paranoid, yeah. I won't let them, yeah. They won't see me, yeah. I gotta sleep with one eye open, been making me nervous. I take a piss, my hand on the strap. I know the odds wanna murder. I got a feeling, keep my stomach paranoid, yeah. I can't let them, yeah. They won't see me, yeah.
Lost, see, I glossed too, we shit ain't been the same.